And thousands of anti-ICE protesters took to the streets in Minneapolis Saturday, calling for an end to the immigration enforcement there after a deadly confrontation on Wednesday. The Department of Homeland Security is preparing to send hundreds of more agents to the city.
Minnesota in mourning now, and protests in Portland. Outrage growing from coast to coast in the aftermath of two shootings at the hands of federal agents. In Minneapolis, residents still mobilizing after an ICE officer shot and killed a 37-year-old mother. Videos from Wednesday capturing the moment the agent shot Renee Nicole Good right there in her car.
Well, as the focus on the investigation takes center stage, we are working to get new information about Good, who died in yesterday's shooting.
She brought it upon herself.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt posting, "This woman was not an innocent mother dropping off her child at school. She was a leftist insurrectionist who was purposely and illegally obstructing law enforcement."
A woman was using her vehicle as a weapon. But you heard our interview with the police chief on CBS Mornings. One of the things that the police have described to us is situations where police officers do not put themselves in a position to have to fire or discharge their weapon when somebody isn't committing a crime. Police Chief O'Hara told us she was blocking traffic, but that was the only thing that she was doing at the time.
Good was born in Colorado and prior to living in the Twin Cities lived in Kansas City, Missouri. Neighbors there tell our NBC affiliate that she moved about 8 months ago, and one neighbor there says Good was a mom who loved her family.
A neighbor who, is not a terrorist, not an extremist. That was just a mom who loved her kids, loved her spouse.
This is a city that's got a lot of history in protesting against law enforcement, and that's just what we're seeing today.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Renee Good's wife, Becca, who had been the passenger in the car, approaches. Cell phone cameras on the street start recording as Ross walks around Good's car with Good's wife following.
I said go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Renee Good backs her car up as the agent walks around the front of the vehicle.
So we are now going to deal with the other 6 of the 12 insights that we're dealing with in this blow-by-blow analysis, starting with point number 7, me filming you, filming me, filming you. Let's have another look at that.
Renee Good's wife, Becca, who had been the passenger in the car, approaches. Cell phone cameras on the street start recording as Ross walks around Good's car with Good's wife following.
Not just following, but filming. They are actually filming each other. If there's any doubt about the provocative nature, the fact that several people were filming the altercation while participating in it, well, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? And listen to the tone and pay attention to the word choices of Good's wife.
It's okay, we don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking driver. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I said go get yourself some lunch, big boy.
What do you think she means when she says, when you come talk to us later? And what do you think she means by, you want to come at us? It reminds me, frankly, of the Crans-Montana madness where kids filmed the fire around them while dancing and laughing before being consumed and killed by it. It's this bullshit all over again. What we're really talking about when there's a fire and you're filming it is a danger that is escalating. That's exactly what is happening here, except that danger has to do with vehicles and firearms, in the context, of course, of political animus. Now, I do think if the officer genuinely thought he was dealing with a terrorist, he wouldn't have been filming. But keep this aspect of filming this stuff for social media, for reinforcement, for backup. Keep this in mind when we deal with programming.
That community. For years, the city has felt the impact of political violence, police brutality, and gun violence. In 2015, 2 police officers shot and killed an unarmed man.
And there's a lot more to say about that context and that timeline. We'll get back to that in a moment. Now, let's deal with number 8, escalation.
At the same time, on the other side, 2 more agents approach. One tries to open the door as Good backs up. Good's vehicle starts moving. From Ross's cell phone video, you see Becca, the woman in the white beanie, trying to get into the car again.
In true crime, what you want to do and what you want to see as an investigator is a de-escalation in the stresses, the anxieties, the escapism, the fear, the anger, the frustration, all the factors driving the situation. That's if you want to prevent a crime from taking place. That's something that also applies to your own personal life. Because if you recognize the pattern, you can de-escalate it. Unfortunately, Good's choice to drive away, while it may seem like breaking the impasse and getting herself out of an escalating situation, well, what happened? It radically escalated it with fatal consequences. You can't say, well, I'm getting out of an escalating situation and that means I'm de-escalating it. You can't say that that is happening if for the other person it is escalating it. True de-escalation is de-escalating it for both sides. Now, what is certainly true here is if Good got out the vehicle and didn't drive away, it would de-escalate the situation. But you would also be able to say for Good, it would in a way escalate it. She would feel more fearful. She would feel that she is no longer in control. But would she feel in fear of her life? Would she be in danger of losing her life, realistically? So one option in this situation that was always there was to simply do as instructed, which was to get out of the vehicle. But a lot of what was going on was apparently ostensibly to resist, to frustrate, and I also think to humiliate the agents. And compliance ends up being the opposite of that you feel smaller, you feel humiliated, which isn't the point of all of this. But the real test is what is lawful in the situation, and I don't mean for law enforcement.
Backs up. Good's vehicle starts moving. From Ross's cell phone video, you see Becca, the woman in the white beanie, trying to get into the car again. You also see Renee Good, turning the steering wheel to the right.
And that brings us to point number 9. Is Ross's life in danger? Once again, I'm not going to show the moment of the shooting, but I do want to show whether the vehicle brushes Ross, and what we can see is that it's not completely clear. It's hard to make out. I have seen footage where from a different angle you actually hear what sounds like a thud, and it's in this crack in the narrative where it's not completely clear that people basically perceive what they want to believe, and this is a mistake. In my view, the actions of the driver aren't life-threatening, but to do what she did was an aggressive, threatening act under the circumstances. I mean, compared to getting out the car, which would have been the most passive action under the circumstances, driving away was certainly a lot more aggressive. And because there's even a hint of aggressive behavior, the officer uses this as a license to respond in kind. And the difference is he knows he's sort of above the law, that even if his actions are rash, he likely has the backing of higher authority. And guess what? He did, and he has. If you're arguing that Good didn't do anything wrong, or that what she did wasn't very wrong, you're missing the point. This is about a power struggle, and in this context, law enforcement hold all the cards. The private individual here doesn't hold all the cards, doesn't have the power. Law enforcement not only have the power, but you can't help wondering if they are above the law as well. In other words, even if they exceed their mandate, they'll be fine, aren't they? And they'll be backed up by higher authorities, won't they? And haven't they been told this? So I think the answer is that the vehicle does brush against Ross, but not significantly and not sufficiently to even cause a slight injury. I'm not sure if I've seen media reports saying he was bruised or hurt in the incident, although I believe I did hear somewhere that he did go to hospital afterwards, but he doesn't seem to have any really serious injuries that we are aware of. I don't think it's accurate to say that he wasn't struck at all, or that it was Good's intent to run him over, and this is a legal question. That's something we've really got to ask. Did Good intend to run him over? And I will say I don't think Good's intent was anything like Ross's, anything near Ross's intent. Remember, he fired not 1, 3 shots. 2 of those shots were when the vehicle was already past, or still passing him, when the danger had already passed. And what does that say about his intent? And that brings us to the 10th point, Good's intent. This is a legal question, and here the footage does appear to come to a rescue.
Seconds later, Becca Good runs to her wife, followed by the agent who fired his weapon. He briefly looks into the driver's side of the car and then walks away.
CNN's assessment is that Ross doesn't appear to be in the path of the vehicle when he fired. I'm not sure that's true. I would say he's not directly in the path, which is why the vehicle brushes by him. I also think if he was more directly in the path, he wouldn't have been able to fire because he would either have been run over or else trying to move away from the vehicle. That would have been his priority.
Shame! Shame! Now, what we cannot see in Ross's cell phone video is if the SUV made contact with the agent because the camera angle jerks up to the sky.
Now, that camera jerking up to the sky, I don't think that shows that the vehicle missed the officer. I think it shows just at what close quarters it was and to what extent he may have felt his life was in peril or his safety was in peril. According to the Washington Post, the camera briefly captures Renee Good, who had been talking with the agents at her side window, turning her gaze to look ahead through the windshield. She then looks down as she shifts the vehicle into drive. She looks up again and she turns the steering wheel to the right away from Ross. It would be completely different if she turned the vehicle to Ross or looked at Ross, put the vehicle in gear, didn't turn it away and just drove straight ahead. Now, not only does she look at Ross, her turning the wheel indicates a moment where she does something unlawful. She flees the scene. But this is important. Her intent isn't to kill Ross. It's to get away from him. Is her intent to injure him? And this is also something that's interesting. Ross has been filming her. He films her in this moment. Did he not know that was her intent? To get away, and she's turning the wheel. Is her intent to injure him? Maybe. I think it is possible. Personally, I doubt it, because he wasn't ultimately injured when he could so easily have been. And if you say he was injured, well, not injured very seriously and certainly nowhere near as badly as Good in the situation. Meanwhile, what is Ross's intent? Even though he hasn't been injured and the danger he faced is receding, he fires not one but 3 shots directly at the driver, at her head to be clear. And if you examine the footage, there are bystanders all over, and him shooting her in a moving vehicle causes it to crash into other vehicles. It could easily have run over someone else and killed him. Also, if the bullet had penetrated the vehicle or missed the vehicle completely, there were people behind the vehicle as well. And so the question does arise, is the agent's behavior here conventional? And I do think even if it isn't, if it's reckless, he'll probably still be protected under the situation that he is in. Number 11, postmeditation. I don't know if we are dealing with a premeditated act here, but goodness knows there are sufficient stresses and triggers for the officer to have formed the intent prior to the act. Maybe he was thinking, if she tries to drive away, ... The officer using his cell phone clearly indicates the seeds of intent were forming. I think the same actually applies to Good and her wife, which is the fact that they were using cell phones, that they parked, didn't they have a premeditated plan as well? But it's hard to say whether there was a split-second premeditation or just an officer acting on instinct or programming, or perhaps all three.
Driver's side of the car, and then walks away.
Shame!
Now, what we do see and hear quite clearly happens during what I call the post-meditation. We see Renee's wife sprinting to the scene, whereas Ross quickly holsters his firearm. I believe he also looks at his cell phone in some of the immediate aftermath footage as well. This points to arguably either an awareness of potential legal peril he might face or perhaps consciousness of guilt. Can you imagine Good's wife doing that, looking at her phone immediately during this situation? Instead, she runs to the scene. She is caught up in an emergency. He is far more relaxed in that situation. We also know that Ross doesn't call 911 himself. We know he doesn't render aid to the victim beyond glancing into the vehicle, I believe, to confirm what I think he already knew when he fired the shots point blank and on target. We also see very little urgency from the other agents who actually end up preventing medical staff attending to the scene when they do arrive. And I'm not sure if it's rocket science to determine the identity of the person who said fucking bitch immediately after Good was shot to death.
Shame!
You also notice he doesn't film Good. He doesn't film what he's actually done to her when he goes to the vehicle. Now, you can hear bystanders yelling shame immediately after this, which provides further context to the jeering, the harassment, the stress these officers were under, but also the mutual animus going on. And then the final point, number 12, did Good weaponize her vehicle? Obviously, the legal issue here is shooting an unarmed civilian and killing her. But if you can convince someone that the victim was armed and dangerous, then that may justify the use of lethal force. Look at this from the DHS Assistant Secretary. This footage corroborates what DHS has stated all along, that this individual was impeding law enforcement and weaponized her vehicle in an attempt to kill or cause bodily harm to federal law enforcement. Now, even if it's to cause slight bodily harm, that is something that they can use against her. Now, the wording of attempt to kill, that goes to intent. And then also impeding law enforcement, is that true or isn't it? Well, I think it is. But I don't think the vehicle was used as a weapon. I don't believe Good was doing anything else but trying to flee the scene. And I also think that was a fatal mistake. I think they thought they're kind of playing a game. They're just trying to frustrate what's going on. And so in a way, it's innocent. But she should not have fled the scene. Anyone in a sort of police stop situation must listen to what they're being told. And had she not fled the scene, there would have been no use of lethal force. And she'd be alive, possibly no harm, no foul. Now, I'm not going to take it further than that, except to say, remember what we said about context matters and a wider view matters. Well, here's a hint why it matters so much in this case.
Now, just 2 weeks into 2026, the community is grappling with the fatal shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good, as well as the Trump administration's ongoing immigration crackdown.
In the next video, we're going to deal with what I think are real insights. This is where it gets really incisive. And this is where we turn the story into a more personal story and deal more directly with how we experience a lot of these things. And so we're going to be dealing with, first of all, programming. So look out for that in the next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.